Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports. We come to you every Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time, worldwide on Charlton and Big C Sports. And we talk everything sports. We keep it real. We also cover some Hollywood. And the Mega Dollar Show today is June 28th, 2016. And we call it Making Your Dreams Come True, Big C, because we're also in the position of the world right now where they listen to us in Latin America. So I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners that tweet out to us from Latin America, also London, England, as well as Berlin, Germany, and the great country of Canada, and of course, the great United States of America. Big C, it's about 106 degrees here in downtown Sacramento, California, the state's capital. What's going on in the South? I know you call it from the East Coast all the time, but are you using your neighbor's phone, or did your phone melt down this time, Big C? Whose phone are you using this time, Big C?
Well, Charlton, you got to look at it. That's girl tips. You guys got to stop being sissy about this. Man up. Little heat is good for everybody.
Yeah.
That allows the cold to go down a little easier, Charlton, but we got the warmth and the humidity back here in the eastern part of the United States. A lot of rain, Charlton. Yeah. Would love to send some of it out to California to douse those fires and the people land with the devastation out there. But, you know, we're enjoying it back here and looking forward to the kickoff of college football season in a couple of months, where those guys will stroll out here from the West Coast and drag themselves back to the West Coast.
Well, the funny thing, I heard that Lynn Swann had the good old boys down at Southern California, the men of Troy. You know, they're revamping the Coliseum because the Los Angeles Rams are going to play there for the first season or two. But the USC Trojans, the most dominating football program west of the Mississippi, and they're getting ready for the good old boys down in Alabama. I hear it's so hot in L.A., Lynn Swann let them have only one practice today instead of three, Big C. So you guys might get a catch a break today down in the South, too. Are you guys holding one practice a day, Big C, or is it still 3 a day, Big C?
Well, this is 3. This is man football. See, when it's hot like this, we don't even heat up our hamburgers. We just sit them out there on the sidewalk and let everything cook and the cheese melts out. This is real man sports. So, you know, we're waiting on you guys, you know, with all that foo-foo and tutu stuff come on. Show up. It'll be okay.
I understand they even put the horse in the shade. They normally have the horse running around the Coliseum, but they say we'll get enough running when they play Alabama, because every time they score a touchdown, the horse takes a lap. So they're getting him rested up for all the laps he's going to be taking against Alabama, Big C. But all
he doing again.
Oh, that's funny. Hey, Lynn Swann's getting that horse in shape. And speaking of getting in shape, this section is also sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealer, home of the all-new Escalade, the standard of the world. And you can only get it there brand new. And when you go down and test drive it, tell them that Charlton and Big C sent you. Now, Big C, I know we've been a lot of fun on the show. We like to call it Real Talk. But there's also some sad news in the sports world today. You know, University of Tennessee coach, she's one of the greatest coaches in the history of college basketball, whether it's men or women's sports. Pat Summitt, your thoughts on her and her 11 NCAA championships, Big C?
Well, you know, Charlton, Pat Summitt was probably the greatest basketball coach of all time when you think of what she's done.
Yeah.
You know, she won a FIFA World Championship, she won an Olympic gold medal, and several NCAA titles. But, you know, more than that, Charlton, what we've talked about the past couple episodes is about graduation of young people.
Yeah.
You know, this is what Pat Summitt personified. Now, she was afflicted with the same disease that the late Muhammad Ali was, Alzheimer's. Yeah. And she had to give up her coaching position in 2012. She was the head coach of Tennessee from 1974 to 2012. Charlton, she won almost 85% of her games.
Yeah.
But the most amazing part about this miraculous woman, Charlton, when you look at it, every player who utilized all of their eligibility at the University of Tennessee graduated.
Yeah.
You talk about an impactful person, Charlton, on lives, and we've talked about that in the past couple of weeks, how Muhammad Ali left the world better than what it was when he showed up. And the same can be said about Pat Summitt, Charlton.
Yeah.
The impact she had on the lives at the University of Tennessee and in the sports world.
Yeah.
It wasn't just there on campus in Knoxville. It wasn't just with the ladies basketball team. Charlton, she set a standard that every coach in America could live by. You know, Mike Krzyzewski followed her, Gino Auriemma followed her, and even Bobby Knight was one of those coaches, Charlton, that was in line as far as what they taught their players about what you do in life, not just on the basketball court, Charlton.
Well, you know what, Big C? I think that's so funny that you say that, because as great a coach as she was. And see, when you and I talk about athletes not being exploited and having the chance to graduate, not everybody's going to be an Einstein. Not everybody's going to be a W.E.B. Du Bois or a Thurgood Marshall. But you have made this point clear to me, and sometimes I even took it for granted being out here on the West Coast where there's a lot more to do than just play football, Big C, and lift weights all day. But I think about the contracts, because money talks. You know, everyone tells you they appreciate you, they like you, but money tells you how they really feel about you. She made less money than some of the great men coaches that they never even got close to winning 11 championships because there's still gender inequality. However, she graduates her kids. When you send your kid to play for Tennessee, she graduated her kids. She made sure they had life after basketball, life after college, Big C. And that's all we're asking. And we know that sometimes it's the boys that get exploited in this college basketball free-for-all thing, where at least the women tend to have the chance to get pulled in and get an education. So, Big C, what you brought up, Pat, some of us already doing. All you're saying is kids need an education, not just to jump higher and run faster and get taller. So how can the men learn from her example, Big C? Just your thoughts on that, Big C.
Well, you know, with the men coaches, it's all about wins and losses. I mean, Charlton is like that in sports, period. It's all about wins and losses. Not many coaches keep their jobs when they only win 30 to 40% of their games.
Yeah.
But you also have to be a people person, Charlton. That's the number one thing. You're taking someone's child and molding them for the future, Charlton. A parent has turned over their teenage daughter to Pat Summitt.
Yeah.
Pat Summitt made a promise in their living room that she would take care of their daughter.
Yeah.
You can't get that from a male coach. When you think about the number of male coaches that coached the men's basketball game at Tennessee during Pat Summitt's tenure, there was at least a half a dozen, Charlton.
Yeah.
And you're not going to find a graduation rate, Charlton. That's what you're going to find. You're not going to find. You found NCAA sanctions on the men's program.
Yeah.
And so when you look at the leadership of a Pat Summitt, the quality of this woman, this person, this is what you strive for in academia, Charlton.
Yeah.
This is what you strive for. And there's a lesson that should not be lost. You know, we lost her, we lost Muhammad Ali, but you have to learn from what they put in front of you. Just don't let it go with them. Take what they had, make it better, show what you can leave as a legacy as a coach, like the great Muhammad Ali and the late great Pat Summitt, Charlton.
Well, see, Big C, I think that's so eloquent the way you bring that up, because in the world of business, we know it's about money. There's a lot of money on the line. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars for each university because of athletics, not because of science, not because of their math department. And we know math and science are important, but it is a money business. I'm just thinking that just like in slavery, you didn't have to pay people, so of course you can make a big profit. This is almost like legalized slavery, what college is doing with the sports programs, because not paying kids is an antitrust violation. You can find a way to do it when the law cracks down on you, and that's why the NCAA is fighting it so much, and Jay Bill has brought that up. Now, what I also want to bring up is that when you look at the men and the women, and this may be a little bit controversial, Big C, but usually it's the black kids that are the ones that are going through this exploitation. We know studies show that Caucasian people have an easier time assimilating to society because the majority is Caucasian. It's easier to get a job. When you're a 6'9", 6'5", 6'10" young African-American boy, and you go to apply for employment, they're going to ask you, do you have a degree? The answer is yes or no. You can't say I had a 42-inch vertical leap. You can't say I scored 25 points a game and we won the conference championship. And so that's what I appreciate about Pat, what she did. A lot of her kids can go on into the corporate world and they have a degree, Big C, so that's important. And I also want to bring this up because if we don't bring it up, a lot of people don't, Big C. And I'm saying this just not just for kids, but for universities that may not even care, but for the parents. And I think it bears repeating. When a college coach comes into your home and they're telling you they want your kid to come to their program, instead of saying I've sent X amount of kids onto the NBA or several got drafted by the NFL, ask them for the GPA. Ask them for the GPA of the kids that already came through that program, because that will help stop the exploitation of the black athlete and even poor white athletes. But I just sat around a bunch of attorneys earlier today, and many of them talked about, Big C, how many trips they took around the world. Some were talking about how they spent 2 weeks in Europe. Others were saying how they spent 2 weeks in Hawaii. Others were saying how they spent 2 weeks traveling in the United States. 99% of these guys were Caucasian men. They remind me of the guys that run the NCAA. 99% Caucasian men. they have a degree, they have an education. That's what we're trying to tell the young black athlete. Does that make any sense, Big C, or am I out of bounds?
Charlton, you hit the nail on the head when you talk about this complete exploitation. And the coaches are very well aware of it, Charlton. The deans of the universities are very well aware of that. Pat Summitt went in promising, if you've completed your eligibility at the University of Tennessee, I will have you a degree. You don't see any college football coaches today, Charlton, on the top level of the top 100 universities going into anyone's living room making that promise.
Right.
You don't see any college basketball coaches on the male side, Charlton, walking in making that promise. Now, Gino Auriemma makes that promise.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he does.
Villanova.
Yeah, he does.
Can make that. And even Mike Krzyzewski, Charlton, cannot make that promise because the number 2 overall draft pick, Joe Rivers, was one and done at Duke.
Yeah.
So, when you look at that, he's trying to pad his win coffer. Roy Williams at North Carolina on NCAA sanctions for improprieties educational.
Yeah.
And so when you look at these top programs, years ago people beat up Jerry Tarkanian because he had teams predominantly of African-American players.
Yeah.
And everybody said he was doing it illegally.
Right.
What Jerry Tarkanian did in the 70s and 80s is what everybody does now, Charlton. It all depends on the size of the university, but he always had a small school, such as a Long Beach State, a UNLV, that was going in beating up on the big boys, and they were like, okay, we make all the money. How can this also ran with these street basketball players come in and beat us? He was a great coach, Charlton. He gave players opportunity, and because they had nothing if they didn't play for him. But when you look at a coach who makes that promise to say, hey, I'm going to make you better. I don't care if you go to class or not. That's what you're getting from everybody else. Eric Tarkanian was upfront and honest about his recruitment of players. Coaches now, in their press conferences, lie so much. It's almost like Pinocchio sitting up there on stage. You got to turn your head every time he moves.
I understand. And speaking of that, Big C, we just had the BET Awards. The BET Awards were just on Sunday, and we talked about how great Jennifer Hudson was as a singer. Stevie Wonder was there. They honored the late Prince, who was just a musical genius, absolutely amazing person. And when you look at that, Spike Lee was in the audience along with Sam Jackson. Now, Spike Lee produced the movie He Got Game, and exactly what you brought up, Big C, was chronicled in the movie He Got Game. Ray Allen played Jesus Shuttlesworth, who was a high recruit, high school basketball player. Denzel Washington played his father. And they even had Lala, Carmelo Anthony's wife, who was in there, as well as Rick Fox, a lot of marquee talent. But the point that you brought up is so powerful because the universities, they were coming around this kid to get him to come to their university. And everything was being taken care of if they went to his university. So he became the meal ticket for a lot of people. And you brought this up to me, Big C, because you're around the SEC, and I'm not making fun of just the SEC, but it's probably the highest recruited conference for African American. They recruit more black American players probably than any other conference outside of the black colleges in the South. Now, that is important because if you have an education, like what Pat Summitt did with her kids, it almost levels the playing field compared to the guys that don't have it. Now, not everybody needs to have a degree to succeed in society. I'm not saying that. But our society is becoming more high-tech. And when I just sit around with a group of lawyers, guys that make high-figure incomes, and they were talking about how much they travel throughout the world, none of them talked about how much they bench press. None of them talked about how fast they ran the 40. None of them talked about how high their vertical leap was. None of them talked about how they won a conference championship. They were talking about tort law and civil law and federal law. That's what they were talking about. They were lawyers. And they were taught by someone who cared about them, someone who gave a damn. And that's what I'm saying to young black athletes. They were not talking about how great their coach was. They were talking about how they were forced to learn by their academic advisors. They all had advisors, Big C. And we have Jim Harbaugh out here coming to the great University of Michigan. He's not trying to get kids to go to law school. He wants them to go play football for the Wolverines. So what you talk about, Big C, I'm a little bit slower than you, so it caught me a while to catch on because I'm still waiting for those pom-poms that you haven't sent. I check the mail every day, Big C. But if people would listen to what you're saying, like Jim Brown when he brought it up, you brought it up first, Big C. Get your education. Don't get exploited. But it's up to you to be responsible for your own life, Big C. And that's what you're saying to the young student athletes as well as their parents, Big C. Your thoughts on that?
Well, Charlton, when you look at the University of Michigan, they have one of the greatest law schools in the United States. Many people are not aware of that.
Yeah.
So when you talk about their athletic programs, you've only ever known Michigan for their football program, the Maize and Blue. You've known them for their basketball program back in the early 90s when they had the Fab
5. Yep, Fab
Made it
5.
to the NCAA tournament with Glenn Rice.
Yeah.
You know, you don't hear people sit up talking about their law school. One of the top ones in the country. Jim Harbaugh is not recruiting lawyers.
No, he's not.
Jim Harbaugh is not out there recruiting anybody who is 6 foot tall, 175 pounds,
Right.
to come out and play quarterback, running back, or receiver, Charlton.
Right.
That's not what he's doing. But, you know, he bypasses, as many other coaches, Charlton, on the college level, they bypass the academia.
Yeah.
You know, I would love for any of these coaches, and I know every now and then when there's a game and they talk about the scholar athlete of the week, and you got some player with a 3.2 GPA or 3.5 GPA, and that's promising.
Yeah.
It's really nice because, you know, when you think about his athletic load that he has to be able to produce and also keep a GPA up.
Yeah.
But, you know, you're not hearing cum laudes on the football team, on the basketball team.
Yeah.
When was the last time you saw a guy on the basketball team in that role? You just don't, Charlton.
See, that's a good point, Big C, and I'm glad we're on that because I like Jim Harbaugh as a coach. But those players, if he recruits my son's only going to be there 4 years. Outside of that, he needs to get his resume ready. Because even if you have the chance to get drafted into the NFL, and I've known a ton of athletes over the years, Big C, and you've known a lot more than I have. But it's something that you're a very intelligent person. And I understand that as a large African-American male, sometimes the first thing people say to you is, wow, do you play football?
I'm getting a little sick and tired of you putting my life in jeopardy so people know what I look like when I walk up and down the street. It is not easy. Okay?
Well, just like JR's, but keep your shirt on, Big C. They won't see the six-pack you carry. But, you know, the point is this. When someone tells a good-looking woman, God, you're gorgeous, that feels good. And there's a lot of pretty women that think they're going to get by in their looks. But looks are only going to carry you so far. There comes a time when you got to pass the test, and you got to know the answers to the test, and it can't just be, I'm pretty. Does that make sense to
you? This, Charlton. How often do you hear an athlete described as a stud? Okay?
Yeah.
We understand what stud means in the agriculture world, okay?
Yeah.
And that's what they describe African-American athletes as. He's a stud.
Yeah.
He's a stud. So what are you saying? That he's a stallion?
Yeah.
You know, that came off the Kentucky Derby and you know, you're going to put him out the pasture?
Yeah.
This is how they describe him. They don't talk about he's an academic genius.
Yeah.
They don't say, hey, you know, this is what I want my son to be like academically.
Yeah.
You know, he's studying physics. He's studying calculus. We don't get that. We hear these things about African American. Oh, he's in general studies.
Yeah.
You know, that's where he's undeclared. He's a junior, but he's undeclared. So in other words, he's just getting by with whatever box cutter classes that he can to stay eligible.
And see, Big C, it's designed that way. And speaking of design, this segment is also sponsored by your Northern California BMW dealers, home of the ultimate driving machine. Go down and test drive the 1 Series all the way up to the super powerful 600 horsepower M7, also known as a 760 Li, and we can test drive it and let them know that Charlton and Big C sent you. Now, Big C, I also bought the V12 BMW. The car's an amazing car, but just like anything else, they have to build it right, and you have to maintain it. And we put a lot of time into talking about cars, and a lot of young kids, especially, I'm going to say because I'm one of them, young African-American boys, they're more likely to buy a BMW and put some 24-inch rims on it or 26 or whatever, because that's what's important. The look thing. The look is more important than the substance. But I would just say with these lawyers that I sat down and talked with, they were talking about how they're going to send their kids on to law school, how they're going to send their kids on to medical school. None of them talked about how they're going to go play football for Jim Harbaugh at Michigan, or even for your guy, you know, Saban down there at Alabama, and run around playing 4 and 5 hour practices throughout the day so they can try to play a game against USC or win the SEC again. And so this talk is not just for young black Americans. This is for everyone. But I know boys who look like me get exploited. I have a ripped stomach. I'm in great shape. But I worked hard to get there. But I'm also intelligent. And I want parents to understand what you're saying. Because right now, kids are signing to go play football, Big C. They're signing to go play basketball. They're leaving home to go to the next college. But if they can listen to guys like you and myself and what Jim Brown talked about, and Harry Evers talked about, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar talked about, they'll take the education more serious. Don't let these coaches exploit you. I like Jim Harbaugh, but he can't tell me how many people graduated and with what GPA, even when he was at Stanford or now that he's at Michigan. So I want the parents who are too afraid to speak up for yourself, listen to Charlton and Big C Sports and ask the big question. Big C, you always say this. Ask the question. How many kids have you graduated that you recruited from your past? And make them show you on paper, Big C. Is that what you're trying to say, Big C?
It does exist, Charlton. You have to have the academic tracking of all college athletes, Charlton, so you can lay that out in front of a parent. And when you say it's not available, you can bring it with you. Everybody has a computer in their hand, Charlton, call us phone or even a tablet. They all have it. It's accessible. But what the players are not getting from these coaches is fulfilled promises.
Yeah.
You know, you get injured as a freshman or a sophomore, and you have nothing, Charlton, to look forward to. You could have been one of the greatest high school athletes around.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden you suffer a serious leg injury, and who knows who you are. You go back to think about Tom Brady in Michigan.
Yeah.
Tom Brady, Charlton, was a sixth-string quarterback as a junior.
Yeah.
But due to injuries, he was able to move up the ladder. No one thought anything about Tom Brady.
Yeah.
And to be a last-round draft pick in the NFL, no NFL team thought anything about it. But he became a success story. But, Charlton, you hear about his success on the field and in his family life, but you did not hear about him being an academic All-American at Michigan. Those are the things you don't hear about. Now, he's done great in the NFL. You know, Super Bowl titles, MVPs, all of that, making a lot of money.
Yeah.
But what was his major in college? You know, those are the things we look at. We look at Andrew Luck, who they're talking about going to be the highest paid quarterback in the NFL once he negotiates his new contract.
Yeah.
We're not sitting around talking about what he majored in at Stanford. They're talking about hopefully he can get past the injuries and fulfill his contract. You look up and down the ledger, Charlton, at these guys. Yes, you get into the sport to make a living, to make a good living. But when you don't survive that injury tunnel and you get injured and it knocks you out of the playing field, what do you have, Charlton? That's what coaches are not promising players. That I'm going to keep you here for 5 years, get you a college degree, whether you play or not if you get injured, and we're going to make you a success on the platform of life.
Well, see, Big C, that's so powerful because I was just listening to a talk show host here in Sacramento. There's a guy by the name of Grant Napier. He does play-by-play for the Sacramento Kings, and I've followed Grant for several years. He's actually out of the East Coast, out of New York. But the whole sports program was talking about how big someone is, how fast someone is, how they're going to help DeMarcus Cousins. Are they going to be a two guard? Are they going to be a point guard? Are they going to do good rebound in the basketball? Are they going to have an up-tempo basketball game? It was all about what can they do athletically, nothing about intellectually what they do outside the field, Big C.
They need to get Cousins some psychiatric help.
Well, they don't care about that.
They need to get him some psychiatric help. That's where he is now. We know that he only spent, 1 year at Kentucky, and he didn't get a full semester of credits while he was there because he had no plans going to Calipari. He had any plans on him staying there.
Yeah.
But this is an atrocity. He made it.
Yeah.
He has the money, and that's what everybody aspires who goes to college to be able to get the money.
Yeah.
But how many players were on that University of Kentucky team that have been successful in the NBA, Charlton? That's what you have to look at.
Yeah.
Each year Calipari has 15 players.
Yeah.
1, 2, maybe 3 might get drafted. But what happens to the rest of them? He has 5 players down on the end of the bench who's not even under scholarship, and those are the players who keep up the team GPA, Charlton.
Well, see, Big C, outside of Charlton and Big C Sports, every Monday to Friday, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time worldwide, I think no one really cares about what someone does outside of the court. And that's why I thought Jim Brown hit the nail on the head, but he did put the onus on the black athlete. No, put it on the teams. Put it on the corporations. But, Big C, I want to bring this up. I was talking to a boxer when we were over at Salem Media. We had him in studio. And he was talking about doing a negotiation with the great Don King, one of the best boxing promoters in the history of promotion. I mean, he had Ali. He had some of the great guys, of course, the great Mike Tyson. But this boxer said he sat down in front of Don King in Las Vegas, and they had everything a man could want, and I'll leave that to your imagination. And he had 2 stacks of contracts. In the first contract, if he said you sign this contract, you get this agreement with me. And he said, well, what's in the second contract? Well, if you sign the second contract, you get that agreement with me. And he said, what's the difference? And the guy said, well, let my attorney look at the contracts. And that's when Don King said, okay, now you're a professional. Because this is about business. It's not about how much money you make, it's how much you keep. And I think that's important because Don King could mesmerize people because he has all the money, the Rolls Royce, the women, the success, the attention, everything. But this young boxer was smart enough to have a lawyer. That lawyer represented him and made sure he did well. The guy still has money to this day. A lot of guys don't have money to this day, Big C. So it all goes back to what you're talking about. It's not just about football, basketball, baseball. It's about life. It's about everything that we could talk about. So it's always important to get it in writing. And speaking of getting in writing, this segment is also sponsored by your Northern California Ford dealer, home of the all-new F-150. They build it Ford tough. When you go down and test drive it, tell them that Charlton and Big C sent you. Also, Beneath His Wings, Foundation.org. Make a donation today. It's easy, it's fast, and secure. And contact Cynthia Evans of CYNN Entertainment when it comes to promotion. She's the best in Northern California. Let her know that Charlton and Big C sent you. You can also tweet out for donations to Charlton and Big C. And Big C, one more thing I want to get on, because we talk so much, and you brought it up to me, because you see a lot of the exploitation, especially down south, and you know it's true, and I know that it goes on here, but even more so egregious in the South. But we lost the great Buddy Ryan, who was one of the greatest coaches in the history of the NFL, where they pay you to play. And he led the great 1985 Chicago Bears team. He really didn't see eye to eye with Mike Ditka, but a lot of players loved Buddy Ryan, Big C. Just your thoughts on the passing of Buddy Ryan and what he meant to football, Big C.
Well, when you look at football, Charlton, the NFL has changed how you play the game because of coaches like Buddy Ryan, Charlton.
Yeah.
He invented the 46 defense in Chicago. They set an NFL record in 1984 with 72 sacks. The following year, they followed up with a Super Bowl win. A year after that, they came one game short of making it to the Super Bowl. But when you look at the punishing style that he invented within the defense, and Buddy had a saying, he said, I want smart players and fearless players.
Yes.
Because a dumb player will make you lose, and a player who's scared will make you lose.
Yes.
And when you look at the infliction that that Chicago Bears defense, the greatest defense of all time, imposed their will on opponents in the NFL, Charlton, in 1985. Great defensive line, great linebacker core, great secondary, but all of the sums were not greater than the individual, Charlton.
Yes.
That's where they were. As they went out and played, and Buddy Ryan taught you how to play the game as a professional.
Yeah.
Take no prisoners mentality, and you have to look at that in professional sports. This is not a buddy, pun intended, contest.
Yeah.
When you go out there and play. I admire Buddy Ryan, and I model myself as a player as he models his defensive players.
Yeah.
Because that's what you look at. This was about intimidation. This is not a pillow fight in professional football.
Yeah.
It took you back to the Raiders of the 70s and the Kansas City Chiefs.
The Raiders. The Raiders, yep.
This was about rendering somebody unconscious. Now, they had a game, Charlton, against the Washington Redskins in 1985. There was like a bloodbath.
Yeah.
There were more players assisted on the field in this one game, Charlton,
yeah.
than I'd ever seen in an NFL game in my life.
Yeah.
Now, today's standard, Roger Goodell is going to suspend half the team.
Yeah.
They're going to be gone.
Yeah.
But this is how football was played. Football was played with tenacity, and it's still played to a degree with tenacity.
Oh, yeah.
But you can't put handcuffs on these hulking, speedy individuals and say, don't hit anybody, because that's how the game is designed. But Buddy Ryan, great innovator. He was a defensive coordinator with the 1669 Jets when they beat the Baltimore Colts, Charlton, in Super Bowl III. Defensive coordinator with the Chicago Bears in 1985. And also his two twin sons, Rex and Buddy.
Yeah.
Were also, head coaches in the NFL.
Yeah.
So when you think about his impact on the sport, Charlton, it's long-lasting and lingering. But he taught people, he taught all men, Charlton, how to be better men. And everybody who played under him was always thankful for that, Charlton.
Well, Big C, that's also incredible. And I just wanted people to know that this segment is sponsored by United Labor, guaranteed life insurance up to $100,000, no medical questions, and we're recruiting agents and brokers from all over the country. Also by Goosehead Property and Casualty, we beat about 98% of the people when it comes to competition. And a quote, and also by One Life America Life Insurance, the leaders in final expense. Call 916-271-2788 and let them know that Charlton and Big C sent you. Now, Big C, in our final segment, I want to bring this up. There's two things I want to get into. Number one, we have the college football that's starting to kick off. And we know that we all love college football. I'm big on the West Coast. You're big on the East Coast on the SEC Conference. USC with Clay Helton, the coaching, is playing Alabama under Nick Saban. And also UCLA under Jim Morris playing Mike Sumlin with Texas A&M. And those are early season non-conference games. I think it's so important to bring this up because USC will play Alabama in front of 100,000 people down in the great state of Texas at Jerry Jones Palace, otherwise known as AT&T Stadium, and we know USC is going to give the beat down on that one. Also, in the state of Texas, you have UCLA, the Bruins, going deep into the heart of Texas at College Station to play Texas A&M. I believe, Big C, you said they increased the capacity of the stadium to over 110,000. Is that what you said, Big C?
120,000.
120,000.
Charlton down in Texas A&M.
That's incredible.
An incredible amount of people.
Okay, now Big C, because we talk about it, and I don't want to be like the ESPN and the Fox Sports that talk about it for about 3 minutes. With all the money that's generated, I know that Nick Saban, he has a private jet, Mercedes-Benz dealership and all that jazz, but he just gave one of his, I think his assistant coaches $1 million raise or $1 million contract. Now, why can't we even get minimum wage? You know, President Obama's trying to get minimum wage to increase to $15 an hour, and people fight it because they want poor people to stay poor. Now, why can't we talk about minimum wage for college athletes when they're playing in front of 100,000 people? The USC-Alabama game and UCLA-Texas A&M combined will have over 225,000 people. We can't pay even minimum wage to the athletes. Big C, your thoughts on that?
Not only that, Charlton, you have the network broadcasting the games, most likely ESPN and ABC, that are going to be broadcasting those games, and they're paying out millions of dollars to each one of those universities, Charlton. These coaches are getting a bonus. Each one of the universities are getting a bonus for playing in these games.
Yeah.
But the players are going to get a sweatsuit and a pair of sneakers, Charlton.
Yeah.
And they should be happy for that. You know, they say this is the type of labor that you do, and we're going to clothe you.
Yeah.
And that's it. And that goes back to that slave mentality, Charlton. All they gave the slaves were some clothes.
Yeah.
They didn't give them anything else. There was no compensation. They gave them some scraps to eat. But they gave us some raggedy clothes to wear. You know, how many sweatsuits can you wear, Charlton? How many pairs of sneakers can you wear?
Yeah.
You know, you walk around campus, everybody see you being paraded around campus as a prize bull, Charlton.
Yeah.
That's what you see. You'd only hear about some athlete, some football player in this game with USC and Alabama.
Yeah.
You're not going to hear about these players being paraded around with the academic GPA, Charlton.
Yeah.
You know, he's 4 credits from graduating. He's already graduated as a junior, and, you know, he's continuing towards his master's in whatever field of study. You're not getting that, Charlton. You're getting that, you know, he's had some injuries and, you know, he hasn't lived up to his potential.
Yeah.
What is the potential of an athlete, Charlton? No one talks about the academic potential. They're all talking about the physical potential. And that's just total exploitation, Charlton.
You know, I remember in high school, I played a football game against Icky Woods, who played for a school called Edison High School down in Fresno. He also went on to the great UNLV down in Las Vegas, but he was also drafted by the Cincinnati Bengals, and he had something called the Icky Shuffle that all the players in the NFL were doing when he ended up playing for the Cincinnati Bengals. And not knocking anybody, okay? But here's a guy that had all the talent in high school, was an All-American, all the talent in college, and then went to the NFL and became a very good player. But here's a guy that instead of being able to coach in the NFL because they don't want him, he was selling meat out of a truck in the Fresno area in the Central Valley. Now, I'm not knocking any guy that works. There's nothing wrong with that. But here's a guy that, just like thousands of young African-American boys across the country, they just brought in for the athletic prowess. Now, he was fortunate that he made an NFL contract, even though back in the day, they didn't make the kind of money they make now. And he still makes some commercials on TV. And that's just one person that I personally played against. But there were a lot of guys, even Tim McDonald out of Fresno played with him. He went on to play at USC and also played for the 49ers. He became a multi-millionaire, had a sports club and everything. That club no longer exists. I bring this up, Big C, for this reason. Guys like John Elway owns a car dealership in Denver, Colorado. Guys like Ronnie...
Seven.
Oh, excuse me. Maybe I was miscounting them. Maybe I was drinking too much moonshine, but he has 7 dealerships. Guys like Ronnie Lott, their names are attached to dealerships. Roger Craig, he's working here with Ronnie Devey, who owns the Sacramento Kings, because somebody gave them an opportunity. Yeah, they happen to be African American, but Big C, they're also educated men, and that's why they're working in corporate America. They weren't just pushed through the system to play sports. So in the last few minutes of the program, Big C, and I'm so glad you touched on this because hardly anybody else will, again, what do parents need to ask these coaches when they show up at your house in their beautiful Cadillac or whatever they drive, and they're showing you all the championships they won in their conference, and how your kid's going to be the next big star? What should they ask again, Big C, your thoughts?
You know, what's the opportunity for my child to graduate? What do you expect the average GPA to be of your freshman class? What was the average GPA of last year's freshman class? How many of those kids completed a full schedule of core classes, Charlton?
Yeah.
These are the things that parents have to ask. Not, you know, well, how many road games and how many games you're going to have on television. and that's what parents are wooed by, Charlton.
Yeah.
And that's what these coaches are telling them. They're not telling them, say, hey, you know, of our entire freshman class, 93% of them pass with at least a 2.7 GPA.
Yeah.
You never hear that from these head coaches, Charlton. It's talking about, well, you know, we expect from your son to contribute to our program. We expect to get him on the field some as a freshman, with Shirley as a sophomore. They're not talking about having him going in, taking core classes, Charlton, getting on the dean's list. That's never discussed with a parent.
Yeah.
And when you deal with these inner city parents, Charlton, and even a lot of these rural parents who don't have the quality education, and they're looking for their son to be a meal ticket for them, and realistically, it's just as much a fault for the parents as it is the coaches.
Yeah.
Because they're in collusion with each other when it comes down to it. Nobody's looking at the child's future unless he can become a professional athlete.
Well, Big C, that is so powerful. And just touching on what Jim Brown said and what you just said, as well as the great Harry Edwards and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, if you're looking for a job, if you're looking for work in the insurance industry, I can hire you nationwide. Just tweet out to Charlton and Big C that you're looking for employment. If you want to get into the insurance industry, we can get you the training nationwide, and you can get that on Charlton and Big C Sports. So I want to tell you, unlike people who say, hey, let's see how big and fast you are, I'm looking for men and women who want to go to work. Tweet out to Charlton and Big C Sports that you are looking for work, and I'll make sure that someone gets back to you. And I want you to know that you have opportunities with us because we're going to create it. And every Monday through Friday, 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time, worldwide, follow Charlton and Big C Sports. And we want you to know that we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.